code keepers and classmates. It's time for another great episode of Professor Kimya's class. This episode is something you want to listen to if you're disturbed by some of those in the Black conscious sphere who might be leading us astray, who might be selling us a bad bit of goods, who may have false information. If you're disturbed by scammers in general, if you're disturbed, even more disturbed.
Disturbed.
Disturbed. If you're disturbed even more by people falling for some of the nonsense, then this is the episode for you. So we're all in our places with bright, smiley faces, and this is the way we start the revolution. Welcome to Professor Kimya's class. So tonight, Black Scammers Part 2. The Dr. Umar episode. And look, we're rallying and biting and banging against scammers. This is not a love or hate Umar show. This is banging against the scammers. But I'm not the professor. Good professor, Dr. Kimya. What's good?
Well, you are an educator, though, so I appreciate that introduction. All right, so first and foremost, you and I started talking about this last year.
Yeah.
And collectives of Black women in particular started talking about this 10 plus years ago regarding that scammer. And people thought that we did not know what we're talking about. So I always tell people, there are people who are actually involved in real work, and we know scams when we know scams. And so we'll talk about what that means. I want to start off by saying that this scammer never represented Black knowledge. That person could have, if they had wanted to, read more, do more, which is beyond talking. I always tell our people to stop relying on social media sources as the knowledge space. We are more than talkers, we're thinkers and we're doers, and we also read as a people. So I want to highlight that this person is not the symbol of Black intelligence, not the symbol of African intelligence, not the symbol of pro-Black, Black power, Black pride, Black radicalism, not the symbol of Pan-Africanism, not the symbol of Black nationalism. A lot of our people do not know the history of Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism for more than 150 years. So when they see people like this fraud, they're like, oh my goodness, now Pan-Africans and Black nationalists are scammers. Like, no, if you want to think that, you need to go back to 200 years ago. Learn about some of the Black nationalist components of Frederick Douglass. Learn about Martin Dulady, who was close friends of Frederick Douglass, but they had differing opinions of where Negroes should go after being freed. Is it go back to Africa, or is it to demand what we have created here? Learn about W.B. Du Bois, who was a Pan-Africanist. Learn about Anna Julia Cooper. Learn about all this different work, including, of course, Harold Cruz, who I specialize in. Learn about Marcus Garvey, who was more the Black nationalist than the Pan-African. This is 200 years plus, including conferences that they started having in the early 1900s. These are people who, many of them were scholars. You can look at the work of C.L.R. James, look at the work of Amy Ashford Garvey when they started that Pan-African collective, Amy Jackie Garvey. This is a lot of work that our people have done. So if some scammers in the past 20 years have your definition of Black leadership and even pro-Black, Black power, Pan-Africanism, Black nationalism, because again, these are not synonymous. You don't have to be pro-Black and become a Pan-African. You don't have to be Pan-African and be a Black nationalist. They're not synonymous. You can look back to Black Panther Party. You can look back to Malcolm X. All these different categories did not fit everyone else's purpose. The original purpose of Pan Africanism was not go back to Africa. The original purpose actually was for our people all around the world where we are, mostly due to transatlantic slavery. We build our people where we are. And that is our common denominator. And we give to each other as necessary, but we have to build where we are. It's not everyone go back to Africa. And it wasn't necessarily a pro Africa focus, except for the question as to where would be the groundwork for the resources that we're developing as a people. So I
Hmm.
highlight that. I highlight that because some people are saying things like if they see black men with like red, black, and green, they're scammers, and they equate that to Pan Africanism too. By the way, so here's a reminder for people and a lesson for people who don't know: red, black, and green are RBG. That is Amy Ashford Garvey and Marcus Garvey, co-founders of UNIA. And that is the red, black, and green flag that the Garveys and UNIA presented. That's the race first. So that is not Pan Africanism, that's actually Black nationalism. The Pan African colors are the red, gold, and green, and any derivative. So it's red, gold, and green. It's going to look similar to the Ethiopian flag and to the Rastafarian colors, which, of course, Rastafarianism is connected with Haile Selassie and Ethiopia in that sense. So I just want our people to learn a lot. I don't rely on K through 12 and colleges to teach our people 90% of stuff. This is 100% up to our families, our communities, and our organizations and collectives to teach this. Even if you don't agree with Pan Africanism, don't agree with Black nationalism, don't agree with Black radicalism, you don't agree with Black pride, you can still teach it so that people can have a very knowledgeable and factual disagreement, but also goes back to what we talked about months ago, what it means to have theoretical integration. You can disagree with something like Pan Africanism and still say, I don't agree with being Pan African, but I understand the tools used by people such as W.B. Du Bois, people such as Anna Julia Cooper, and the list goes on. So you don't have to agree as Black people, but you have to learn how to integrate our approaches because everything cannot be a deal breaker for our people.
All right, classmates. I hope you're taking copious notes. You see, I got my pen and my paper here. Um, you displayed an interesting foundation on today's conversation. And so, for the code keepers, I gotta come clean. Like Jay Rue said, um, y'all know that back in 2012, some of my partners and I brought Dr. Umar to Virginia Beach, Virginia. At that time, he was talking about building the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. We collectively were able to throw a great event. We had 3 showings where he spoke 3 times. We raised around $5,000 after we paid ourselves. So it was profitable for us all. And I have to admit, things aren't looking so good. Things are so there was a time when I was really interested in everything Umar said. 2012, 2011, I was listening to his content, and I have to admit, I want to say it's a fall from grace, but I want to say it's definitely a big fall from grace, particularly because he's been in the news recently saying that he lost access to his money. So look, I'm simply coming clean and saying I do have an experience and a relationship with Dr. Umar. So this hurts to see scammers. This hurts to see scammers like this in our midst, particularly those that particularly I followed at some point. So, all right. So I hate to say it. I hate to say it, but you mentioned that years ago, sisters were saying something ain't right.
A collective of sisters who had already tried to help them and he had already scammed them. It's just like anything, like a business. You look at the business reviews, like if you're going to get somebody to renovate your house, you better actually do research to find business reviews, Better Business Bureau, anything else, right? Ask around. Is this person a true renovator or they're a burglar, right? So the same thing has to apply to the people who you all claim were saying something profound. So here's my question to you, sir.
Ooh, she gave me the sir. It's about to get heated. Okay, go ahead.
What was that person saying that was so profound that you followed that person?
At that time, it was the discussion about the over indexing of black male students in special education.
Do you realize that there's decades of research about that? So you don't need somebody who repeats things 3 times to say it.
I get it. I get it. I get it. I, I do have to admit, at the time, the way that Dr. Umar presented the information, it was, at that time, captivating. At that time, riveting.
Yeah.
It wasn't new
Okay.
information, but I enjoyed the passion that I saw.
Yes, scammers have a lot of passion. So there are a few books that I have here at my home library, and it's similar to when we teach Introduction to Sociology. There's actually a chapter about orators and speakers and cults in many Introduction to Sociology textbooks. And it's also tied to the Adolf Hitler book that I have here in my home office. When you read about the power of speaking, scammers, murderers, cult leaders, mass murderers oftentimes are wonderful speakers. They're wonderful presenters. A lot of times their audience has no idea really what they're saying. All they know is it sounds very poetic. And I can say the same about every politician in the United States of America, including the black politicians, including Congressional Black Caucus. These people know how to be very poetic on your taxpayer dollars. And people will like and be mesmerized by the delivery without actual outcomes for what our taxes are paying for these people's salary. Right?
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
absolutely.
They just sound so amazing. Like, for example, black politicians who've now been politicians for like 60 years, they know the same routine is to talk wonderful, to speak very fluent and sound exciting.
So could we say that one of the signs of a scammer is beautiful language with no
Yes.
receipts? With no
Beautiful
receipts.
language, beautiful language, no receipts. And so what they do intentionally, and that's what this scammer on this big photo that I guess I'm gonna have to stare at him all day. Um, good gracious, God, stare at him. So one thing that people know is the what gets attention. So they're looking at what's the trending topic, what's the hot topic,
Hmm.
and specifically for black people if you're scamming black people, because remember, black people are mostly scammed by black people. I want our people to understand we actually have data. There's actually publications that help particularly black people and non-white and non-black Hispanics to learn that we are majority scammed by our own people.
Now, is that due to
Mhm.
proximity?
It's due to proximity. So in criminology, criminal justice, we talk about routine activities theory. So proximity, just like if it's a robbery, burglary, a sexual assault, murder. And it's also due to cultural markers. So you tend to know what brings in our people as a culture.
Mm.
Number one for black people, a lot of times it's desperation. You can add in some religion somewhere. And if you're anti religion, then you're bringing in some black people who are deciding about what their religious beliefs are going to be, because there is a population of that as well. And then you add some form of black radicalism, because unfortunately, a lot of our people do not understand what our people have done for centuries, and they don't understand the real Black Panther Party, which you and I've talked about before. The Black Panther Party has 3 different stages that I always teach about. The first stage was their most productive stage, when
Hmm.
they actually were doing the soup kitchens, clothing giveaways. They had the health clinics on the corners. That was when they were productive. They started going downhill when they started representing themselves as berets and rifles. Then they went further when they were Stalin, Lenin, Marxist, communist, non-black stuff that does not work for our people. And there's actually publications that I share with my health students that talk about, it's called Beyond the Beret, to get black people specifically to understand that you can't be pro Huey P. Newton, pro Black Panther Party, if you don't understand that black people who've done this work for generations, who are now in their 80s and 90s and 100, will tell you that they actually attended events where these people were actually speakers. And these people did not want you to be impressed by them running around with berets and yelling at the popo. That was not really the main theme. And sometimes some of them understood that in the future, this approach that they used back then might not have a lasting effect. But at the time, contextually, it was something that locally, nationally, and globally, it was defined as radicalism because it comes from European form of radicalism, and it was applied to Black radicalism for the same reason why indigenous people and Black people used Europeans such as Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. And yes, Fidel Castro and Che Guevara were European. Their families migrated from Europe. They were not indigenous people. They were not of African descent. They're white people, no matter how much people try to tan up their photos and stuff. So these are all examples of how. So it happens where a lot of our people we're hoodwinked and bamboozled, led astray by each other a lot, because you can join organizations and they're showing you particular images of people that shows them as having darker melanin, thicker, coarser hair. Yeah, these people are here for us. Their approach is our approach. It works for us. So if you can understand how that gets us scammed by non-Black radicals, you have to understand that our own people know us even better than that, right? They know us even better than that.
Right. So you just kind of went into how the Black radical aspect of the scammers, particularly those who are impact our community. What are some of the other things that we can look out for so we can see these scammers coming a mile away?
All right. So one, again, like I said earlier, they're just regurgitating stuff that's talked elsewhere. And so this is one thing I always tell people. What are you contributing that's not already been said? Because people do that a lot. I always tell people you can duplicate what I said, but you probably do not have the background that I have in this line of work. So you're just repeating stuff. So you can always tell when people have not really done the work to learn about it. And when I say work, we're talking about reading, we're talking about doing some research, we're talking about also community engagement.
Okay.
You can also tell when people are interested in getting some money because it's a very immediate donation. Donation is very immediate for a lot of these people. So here's why I tell people. I want our people to understand we have centuries of millions of Black people, centuries of millions of Black people who are actually doing real work to help our people. They're in your neighborhood. They're in your city. They're in your state. And for people who are listening globally, they are where you're located globally. All right. So do not follow the people who you cannot prove they're doing real work and then ignore the people who are actually doing some stuff. Mm-hmm. They're doing some stuff. A lot of the money they're spending out of their own pocket. Like I provide community resource tables in different cities and different states. I don't get paid to do that. I don't ask for donations to do that. You have to understand, people who are doing work for our people, their free work that they do tends to be for our people. It doesn't mean you should not donate, but it means that a lot of times they're going to do it because they have a larger purpose for their work to help our people with larger outcomes. So the people who immediately say, give me money, and then they yell at you, which is like religious leaders yelling at you, because you're going to hellfire and damnation if you don't give them money, which that scammer does that to people regarding that school. That's another warning sign. Because again, if you're yelling at people, number one, we need to learn the foundation that you started with. If you started with 0, meaning you didn't even save up anything to get started to at least buy some books first to see if this going to work for you, then that's a warning. But number two, who are your record keepers? Do you have any paperwork that you can give donors so that people can keep the receipts for when they file taxes, and they can use the donations when they file taxes as well? I can't hear you. You got mute.
Let me tap in. Really, one of the code keepers mentioned that Dr. Umar said some truth about black boys being under attack.
Y'all are so bottom barrel in terms of your expectations. Do y'all realize that there are entire books about black boys? My research, I specialize in black men's mental health. That's what most of my research is on. So if you all need a scammer to say something that has been addressed, including in schools, there are entire academic programs and K through 12 programs to help black boys. So if you need a scammer to tell you that, you're ignoring what I just told you. And actually, scammers need you to ignore what I just told you. I just told you a lot of things that have already been said, and scammers learn how to absorb what's already said, regurgitate it, and they are the ones who lack the knowledge. They're the ones who are not doing the work. They want you to give to them and to ignore the people who were doing this work before they even existed. So I need y'all to don't solidify what I'm saying by thinking that you are refuting what I'm saying, because trying to refute what I'm saying actually proves why scammers like Umar Johnson get you all every time. Listen to what I'm saying. Think about it for a while before you start typing some stuff, please.
Okay, so the battle rapper is back.
Well, I'm just saying, like, this is what scammers need. Is just like cult religious leaders. They need people who are not receivers of knowledge. They need people who are not thinkers. They need people who are not critical and do not know how to have a critical lens that where you can critique. Because every side of every topic can be critiqued. But scammers recognize people who lack that. So you can explain something to people and they will say, well, at the same time means you were not really listening or reading what I explained, and you just think that you're going to go against it, which means that you're going back to the downward spiral that I'm trying to get our people out of. And I'm not the first and I'm not the only Black person in existence to try to get our people away from the spiral. Now, the problem is that, and the sad thing is, if I was talking about non-Blacks or the government scamming our people, Black folk would be like, yeah, tell it. But when I'm talking about other Black people, and particularly Black men scamming our people, that's when our people want to lynch me and hang me from a tree. Because you can't handle the fact that it's most of the crimes are within race, and that's for every race of people around the world.
Okay.
Most victimization is done within race. It's done for your own people. So Black men are no exception. All right. So don't hang me from a tree on behalf of this. You can donate to that fraud all you want to, but I'm gonna tell you what, that school's never gonna exist still. He's still going to yell at the camera for no reason. And this is why I want our people to understand. Prove that you know what it means to create a curriculum. This is what I specialize in doing, helping our people in families and communities know what it means to actually create, not just a school, because that's a building. What does it mean to actually know how to find qualifying staff and teachers? That's a big deal, right? Who to hire is not just having a degree, because you can have all types of degrees and not know the size of your shoe, right? So it has to be what kind of knowledge is being shared. If someone's telling you that they're starting a school and all they're teaching you is about Africa, understand that my love for Africa does not mean that we are erasing the cultures that we've created on this land for centuries. And that's actually the focus that Harold Cruse wanted our people to take. If you read Harold Cruse's work, which I have that shared Google Drive folder, he specifically said he stopped taking the Pan-African focus before he stopped doing the American Communist Party, because he said, you want us to focus on Africa, but our people around the world have to know what we created on that land, so that you know that your culture is the foundation for your own development as a people.
I say that. I'm becoming more and more of a fan of Harold Cruz. All right. So, no, you talked about how scammers, particularly black scammers, are great communicators and very persuasive. They
Mm-hmm.
present a lot of radical or seemingly radical thought. They represent old information in a new way. There's going to be a lot of calls for donation, and they're yelling at people.
They're or sometimes they yell in a very poetic way. They yell in a very loving way. So when you think about the fundraiser that you all had, I don't even have to be there to know that he did not say anything profound. He said something there that he says anywhere. He's not a solutions based person, right? So y'all raised him money to just repeat what he always says. And there are other people who do that same thing, and people keep falling for it, because also it's a form of name dropping. It's name dropping that you know so and so. But again, when someone's a scammer, it's actually embarrassing to drop their name, because it means that you don't really understand that what it means to actually have something productive to present to your people.
Okay.
Just it has to be something productive.
And I have to admit, during that time, 2011, 2012, it was a breath of fresh air. It was information I'd heard before, but it was presented in a new way.
In a new way.
All right. So you know what? What it was presented in a different from a different person. And so
So so
I was locked in. I was locked in for a minute. One of the code keepers is asking the question, why? And look,
Oh, hey
okay,
Justin. That's my wonderful colleague Justin.
okay. So I can't
Why?
understand. I can't understand what why means. So I'm going to
Why?
assume.
Why what, Justin?
I want to assume before Justin taps in and gives us a fuller explanation that he's saying, why are we targeting Umar?
I don't know if Justin would ask that. So if it's the same Justin I know, that I don't think that's the question.
All
So
right,
if
but
it's a
let's
different
answer that.
Justin, if it's a different Justin, then the different Justin will let us know what why means.
All right, but why don't we answer that? Why are we targeting Umar right now?
Who's we? You're the one who chose. Oh, why are you a fan
Oh,
of? Is this why are you a fan of Cruz now? Well, that's not how you spell Cruz. But
well,
I already.
it's all good. It's all good.
He's
So,
asking you that, Seiko. Yeah.
right. The reason that I've become more of a fan of Harold Cruz is because Doc has been sharing some really enlightening information that Harold Cruz presented that I just had never heard of. He was not on my radar. For some reason, he never was in the information that I studied. It Yeah, it's intriguing. His information is intriguing. I'm becoming more and more of a fan because he's been able to describe some phenomenon that have been just kind of ruminating in my head. I've been like, why is this happening? And Cruz gave some reasons why. So that's why I become more of a fan. I'm not totally sold out yet, but I'm getting there. I'm really enjoying it.
Well, I don't sell out black folks, by the way. I believe in
All
integrating
right.
approaches, which is what Harold Cruz also is a proponent of. So Justin has a lot of the readings. So accessing those Harold Cruz readings and a whole bunch of other readings also gives some insight as to what it goes. And I was going to tell more about Justin, but I'm sure Justin doesn't want me to do that. So
Well, and we do that for a different show, but I love
yeah.
Justin coming with some comments. So
Hmm.
why were other people? I told you why I was kind of enthralled with Umar at first. Why were other people enthralled?
Okay, so let's have some honest discussion here.
Okay.
All right, so the majority of black men scammers, it's designed to look presentable, to look like an image that would attract black women.
Okay.
And there are some black men collectives for religions that use men who are considered handsome by some black women, because the notion is that black women would quickly support these black men who look decent without asking too many questions. And they would actually not be bothered by being controlled in these spaces by black men. So, appearance matters. And we're looking at the appearance of the scammer 12 years ago, which has changed a little bit. And so these are also the people though who support the full films, like, is it Hidden Colors? Is it Hidden Colors? Is that the one?
Well, yeah, Hidden Colors.
Yeah, so those are not completely factual, but I mean, there's people who watch that and they host screenings and they don't question any of that content. So
okay, all right,
so
all
yeah.
right, Code Keepers. She's talking about me again. All right, so yes. We did, we did. My partner and I did host screenings of Hidden Colors 1, 2, and 3, and we also did 1865. We also did Jason Black's content, and I will say that
I wasn't talking about you, but you just signing up. So.
Oh no! I mean, because look, people who follow the content, you know, the Code Keepers, they're gonna be like, "Yo, Seiko, she talking about you," because they know. But yeah, there was a time when I was a real, I don't want to say fan, but I listened to a lot of Tariq Nasheed's content, and right now I'm still pretty. I listen to a lot of Jason Black and Professor Black Truth as well. So I don't see the scam in Professor Black Truth for Jason Black. I do see the scam now in Umar. So where do you look?
And, Tariq Nasheed, right? You see that as well, don't you? You don't see the scam in Tariq Nasheed?
I really kind of stopped following his content. He lost me at some point. So I don't know if I would call it a scam. It's just not for me.
Well, no, we're not talking about everything for you. Scam is anything that targets people. So I talk about the acronym cults. Acronym cults are the FBA ADOS people. Those are cults, okay? And before people think they're gonna attack me, yes, my brothers and I have Swahili first and middle names, but we are centuries on this land due to transatlantic slavery. So you cannot tell me to go rub my booty in Africa, because we probably been on this land longer than you have due to transatlantic slavery. So again, Tariq Nasheed, these are all different people who got money from different groups and claiming that they're building museums, anything of the nature. And the question is, why is this something that's important for our people to have? You know, people, you can say it's uncomfortable to say that, but you can't call out Umar Johnson without understanding that initially those two were collaborators, weren't they?
Okay, other than
they were collaborators. They just departed. They left each other. But scammers collaborate and then they dislike each other or whatever and go on their own little scamming ways. So,
there was a fallout. There was definitely a fallout. So, what other than the school piece would make Umar a scammer?
What other?
Yeah.
What other?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I always talk about how it's uncertain how he received his official doctorate. He might have paid off the school to not require the dissertation to be completed, but whatever, But the school is a big deal because you're not a scammer just because you run your mouth with meaningless stuff. Scammer means you're actually getting a product for nothing. So the scam actually comes from the school. That's where most of the money is coming from. Y'all need something else to make y'all mad as Black people? Black people are very high maintenance when it comes to having closed doors on scammers. What do you got to do now? That's not a deal breaker for Black people? Getting donations, getting paid to speak across the nation and in parts of the globe to fellow Africans and not saying anything productive, and you all are getting him thousands of dollars that he's not putting into anything productive. He's using it to pay for stuff that has no business being paid through what you all are paying.
I don't know. That sounds like the business model of motivational speakers. That sounds like Tony Robinson.
Well,
Less
I hate motivational speakers, but that's
okay.
not what Umar Johnson is. He's actually a scammer who's getting paid money and telling you that he's actually creating something for his people, right? He's not just running his mouth. Like those other motivational speakers who get on my nerves, they're not telling you that they're building a school and have a plan for our people, are they? Y'all have mad excuses. And this is what scammers need as well. Scammers, and particularly black scammers, need black people to go all around the corner. Because if you go straight down the street, instead of going around the corner, you'll find some solutions as a people. So scammers need black people to keep making turns instead of having
Ooh.
honest dialogue that
Mm-hmm.
says this is a daggone scammer. We can avoid wasting time and money on scammers and instead invest the resources that we have as centuries as black people into reading more in our families, talking about more than transatlantic slavery, Jim Crow, and police and stuff like that, but actually talking about the solutions that our people have for health, educational development, and economics, and what we can bring in the curriculum in the schools that exist. Because if we don't know how to bring knowledge into the schools, then what do you think a scammer is going to do with the school? Because he thinks that black people don't have enough knowledge to know what to challenge in the first place. He did not even present a curriculum. He did not say, here are the kinds of materials. He just figured calling himself Pan African and claiming Africa focus was going to be enough. And that's not enough. And for people for whom that is enough, that means that, again, they don't know much about education. And they perhaps don't read a whole lot because there's a lot of parents who complain about schools not providing readings, but at home they're not reading and their children are not reading at home either. And scammers recognize the design of many of our families and our culture as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is part two. In part one, you brought up Dr. Sebi. You brought up Umar. You brought up
Sebi,
two.
who was not a doctor. He was not a doctor. He was not a
Okay.
doctor.
Right. Okay.
He's not even a doctorate. So that's a title.
How you've already answered this already. All right. You've already answered this, but I want to close this out. What are three things we should start asking ourselves when somebody becomes popular being presented to us so we can make sure that we don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe?
Okay, I can repeat what I've already said.
Please do.
Okay, so the first one, if you're talking about someone who's pretending to be a health expert and they're black, you need to actually ask them questions to specify what their expertise is regarding health. If they're claiming that they know the cure for everything, first of all, that's not true. Anyone who claims that they have a cure for everything is lying, and that includes if they say that they have a cure for everything that is nature. They are lying, okay? There's no cure for just everything. So that's number one. Realize, and I'm still with number one, realize that just because you do not go back to the doctor, but you feel better, does not mean that the illness has disappeared. It just feels different, and you haven't gone to do a follow up appointment to determine what's going on. Number two, regarding the frauds, such as Fraud Johnson. Again, they're talking a lot about a lot of stuff that's already being discussed. The question is, why are they being supported so much? Also, a lot of times they are supported because they're talking about non-blacks a lot, insulting non-blacks. So that's feeding off of black outrage. Here's the thing: as black people, we want more than outrage at this point, right? We actually need to utilize the resources our people have people have presented for centuries, which is beyond just being angry and talking about non-blacks and what non-blacks are doing to us. Instead, it's saying, what are we developing together as a people? So, with the number two, again, it has to be, what are you presenting to our people? If you've watched the recent videos from Fraud Johnson, where he's talking about the schools being taken back and all that stuff, and him owing some money, that is how it should be. All right. So, any of you who are still willing to donate to him, you should be embarrassed and do not ever admit that. You are still willing to support Fraud Johnson. Number three, another way to detect the scams is that they are not giving our people any evidence of results. So, and this happens locally as well, where you're located. Anytime somebody comes to me and says they're starting a school, I tell them I do not want to see a photo of the school. I actually want you to show a booklet of that you've designed. What is the design of the school? What's the purpose? What kind of materials are you going to use? What kind of materials are you going to teach? It's called curriculum development. What is the curriculum? What kinds of materials will be in the libraries? How are you going to do program evaluations? These things are actually determined before the schools are fully built, because that's also how they design hiring staff. All right. So anyone who tells you that they just build a building and you just walk up in there and you talk about Africa, that's not how this goes. And you also want to remember that we have cultures that we've created for centuries now in this land. Yes, Africa is our common denominator as a people, but you have to know the cultures that we've created in this land. And as Harold Cruz explains, our culture is the core of our development, and specifically economic development. So if you don't know the core of the culture that you have here in the United States of America, you will never develop as a people regarding health, education, economics, because you will pretend that everything's still about Africa when they're not synonymous. They're connected because we are Africans, but they're not the exact same thing. And our people in Canada comprehend this. Our people in Europe comprehend this. Our people in the Caribbean, South America comprehend this. All of our people around the world comprehend that we are Africans. And we've created amazing things where we've been for centuries. So you have to know that to develop something. So when you meet somebody who does not want you to comprehend that development as a people, and especially if they say they're Pan African and they say that Pan Africanism is about going back to Africa and 100% being based on Africa, that person does not know Pan Africanism. As I explained earlier, they do not know the 200 plus years of Pan Africanism. They do not know the works of all the Pan Africans a long, 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 long time ago, where it was actually productive work that our people have on this land. It was not everyone go back to Africa. So people who don't know what they're talking about are oftentimes the biggest scammers. Okay. But they believe that if they talk enough, because they really think, and I'm going to say this, black scammers are similar to other people where they think that black people are stupid. So if they think that black people are stupid, don't read a lot, don't know a lot, they're going to say a whole lot of stuff, and they think that they're going to be taken seriously because they're charismatic or they're handsome or they got some style to them, because they think that we're stupid people. And as E. Franklin Frazier said a century ago, and he was a black man sociologist, he said that if you want something profound and relevant for real change, put it in a book.
Mm-hmm.
So E. Franklin Frazier and other black people recognize that we're not a group of readers overall. I've had black parents tell me that they don't want me to send them books because they don't read, they don't like reading, right? So if we recognize that as a culture, it can be uncomfortable being honest about that, but we have to recognize some of these issues that we have in our culture, and that black scammers recognize that. So black scammers know that they can be dumb. They can be as dumb as the bottom of your shoe. But in their mind, you're dumber than they are. So they're going to be smarter than you are. Because all they have to do is read one page. And I deal with this all the time when I deal with black people of certain religious groups, certain extremist groups. They'll come to me and they have like one page of a book, and they'll print out that page and they'll say, here's my evidence. One page, mind you, because they're accustomed to being in spaces where that one page is more
Is
than
enough.
anybody else in that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
one page is more than anyone else in that space has read since they got out of school and school required them to read, right? So I want our people to really understand what this means, because we're not dumb people, we're intellectuals, right? I tell our people formal education is not the creation of intellectualism, all right? But education has to be in your households. It has to be in our organizations and collectives. Because if not, then the black scammers are going to bank on that literally, because they're going to be like, oh, okay, they real slow, and they're desperate, and they believe that we need a school, and they don't know what a school has to have. They don't know anything about curriculum. They don't know anything about school materials. They don't know anything about library assessment. They don't know anything about accreditation. Scammers know that many black people don't know anything about any of that stuff. And so you can give them a classroom, say, here's Africa. Don't be brainwashed, my brother. And in these scammers' minds, that's all black people need. Say, here's Africa. Don't be brainwashed. Learn about Africa. And you give a lot of money. And unfortunately, that has succeeded for Umar Johnson and other scammers. And it doesn't matter how much those of us explain this, because some people will still fall for it, and they'll say that we're the problem. The scammers are wonderful. So there you go.
Black diamond, 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 black diamond.
Grandpa Crump. Yee.
All right, co-keepers, we had another great episode of Professor Kimya's class, part 2. So I think we need to do a deeper dive on Dr. Sebi, or on Sebi.
Or you can call him by his birth name, whatever you want to do. See ya.
Co-keepers, if you have a topic that you would love the good professor to chat about, let us know. Leave it in the comments. Be at peace. All right. That was